On this episode, we each discuss a few ways that living in Thailand has changed us for the better and for the worse.
So if you'd like to hear our thoughts on how being an expat can change the type of person you are, you'll dig this episode of the Bangkok podcast.
Sawadee krap and welcome to the Bangkok podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who came to Thailand in 2001 and never left, but still misses his home and native land a great deal, especially as we record this on July 1st, aka Canada Day.
All right. Happy Canada Day.
Thanks, eh?
And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a one-year teaching contract 20 years ago. Fell in love with surreptitiously peeling off Thai language stickers that list ingredients in the supermarket so I can read the English underneath. So I never left.
You should start a collection, like a little book of stickers that you ripped off stuff.
Really, I'm kind of embarrassed by it, and I have to kind of hide what I'm doing because I don't think I'm supposed to be removing those stickers, but it's like I can't read the ingredients, so I have to like scratch and peel so I can see what the English is underneath. Maybe I shouldn't be admitting this in public. Maybe the boys in brown are going to come hunting me down.
Yeah, I think they might have bigger things to handle right now.
All right, we want to say a quick thank you to one of our patrons, Soracrit, who supports us at the show's shout-out level. Stick around after we're done talking about some ways that living in Thailand has changed us for the good and bad to hear which sad, pathetic trait Soracrit and Greg have in common. We also want to give a big thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a whole bunch of cool stuff, including our ad-free regular show a day early, behind the scenes photos and videos of our interviews, discounts on swag, which you can find on our website, and various other things that aren't available to regular listeners. But best of all, patrons like Sorkit also get an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we riff on current events and random topics. We just finished recording this week's bonus show, and we chatted mostly about my extremely bizarre week that saw an uncomfortable number of COVID coincidences and close calls, as well as the opening of the Phuket Sandbox, which seems to be off to an okay start, and the COVID situation in Bangkok, which is quite literally the worst it's ever been.
Boo.
To become a patron, head to bangkokpodcast.com/support.
Pray for Bangkok.
For sure.
All right. Well, on this episode, we thought we would get a little introspective here because there's nothing like spending a whole year locked up in your apartment to induce some self-reflection. So we were having a chat the other night and we got to talking about the different ways that living in Thailand has changed us for the better, or things we've learned that have made us better. And it was an insightful topic and we went around a couple of interesting ideas. So we thought we'd explore that a little bit more in detail right now, but we're also going to throw in a new wrinkle, and each of us is also going to bring up one way in which living in Thailand has changed us for the worse.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're not going to be like, thankfully, we haven't been turned into serial killers or anything yet. At least
I'm not ready to admit that yet.
Okay, fair enough. So what do you think of this topic yet? I mean, we've been here. I'm actually coming up on 20 years this month.
And I'm coming up on 20. Yeah, I'm coming up on 21.
Yeah, and it is impossible to live in any foreign place for that long without having changed.
For sure, yeah.
What's your take on that?
Yeah, no, I love this topic. It's hard for me to talk about how I've changed as a person, because maybe that's kind of for other people to judge, but I can talk about things that I've learned that I feel have changed me or changed how I see the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Yeah, it's like, so I've learned so much, and then just certain particular things have expanded my mind or just, I think they have changed me, but then I have noticed some ways that, I've picked up some bad habits, and there's one in particular that I almost feel uncomfortable talking about it, but I will, because I'm trying to keep this real, right?
Keeping it real. We're all friends here. We want to be honest.
That's right. Going to keep it real. So do you want to go first with one of your insights? One of your something you've learned?
Yeah, I'll go first. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to find any massive surprises here. It's not like this is the first time anyone's heard of these things, but I thought it'd be interesting to talk about. And for me, I have become very more aware of the struggles that other people go through. And coming from a privileged upbringing, even though I was never rich, but coming from Canada, we have a pretty good lifestyle. But I am an immigrant in a foreign country. And I have been discriminated against, not a lot, and we've talked about that on the show before. And my discrimination is, a mere shadow of the discrimination that some people think. So I'm not complaining about it, but still, it is an unusual thing to experience. And in addition to that, you just meet a lot of different people from a lot of different places in the world, and you realize how hard that some people work to have what I would consider the bare minimum. Yeah. And it really has opened my mind into just, how lucky I am.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of the word privilege because I think it gets misused in different ways, but,
Yeah, right.
but it is relevant just to when you think about this, you're just born into a situation that you didn't choose or earn. And so you have maybe access to education and a degree of social status, like maybe being middle class or something like that. And you're obviously just born into it, so it seems completely normal. And then you just meet people, from a different social status or whatever you want to call it, or from different places on the planet, and you realize, oh shit, I'm actually luckier than I thought. Or you realize, like 7 billion is a big number. That's the thing that I always joke with my students in my social science class. I'm like, 7 billion is a really big number. There's a lot of room there, and it's kind of like it's kind of like in our discussion of Thailand not actually being a poor country compared to the rest of the world.
Right.
It's like, so you might think you're poor, but then you realize, holy shit, like that's totally different than my life.
Yeah. And the thing that blows my mind constantly about this is, it's not like I spend a ton of time with charities or, in slum communities or something like that, but I have spent some time doing those things. And it blows my mind. And I know Thailand is a land of smiles, but, people are not always happy, but generally I think people are happy if they have a place to sleep, family and friends around them, enough food to eat. And the rest of it is just bullshit that you can strip away. And it's really easy to lose sight of that, just living in a little bubble in a Western country.
True. I mean, that's almost two things in there. But, when you mention the struggles of others, I've had countless conversations with taxi drivers over the years, as you know. And sometimes they ask you your salary, or they bring up the question of money, and then they start talking about how much money they make. And this was one of my early insights that's consistent with your point, is that I think my very first job I got here, I was really lucky, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but let's just say I was making like 60,000 baht a month, and I didn't know exactly what that was or how much it was, but I remember like a taxi driver asking me how much money I make, so I said like 60,000 baht a month, and then he was like, "Oh, I make 6."
Yeah, right.
And he's obviously working his ass off, and I'm sure he lives in some small joint somewhere, and so that was, and he's working hard, like, so as you pointed out, it's like like people are struggling for like a lot less, not just like, they're not like struggling to make 60% of what you make,
Right, exactly.
They're
a lot less.
They're struggling to make 10%. And actually this just popped into my head. A student of mine on Facebook happened to be walking through our university, which is basically shut down, and he took this kind of sad photograph of a guy who everyone at my university knows because he sells peanuts and stuff. He's got this little like peanut stand right in front of my university, and he was sitting there even though the university is closed, So
Oh, man.
there's no, I mean, there's like, people are still allowed to walk through. So there's just like a trickle. I mean, there's got to be 1% of the traffic. I mean,
Right.
And he's just sitting there. And the student posted this thing and said, like, he actually said something like, we should give him some money, or because obviously he's got nowhere else to go. Like he's got no option, because even though the university's closed, he's still sitting there with like virtually no customers.
Right.
And
it's not like he can go down the street to the huge crowd that just is there. Anyway.
Well, I don't know why he doesn't move or can't move. I'm not exactly sure what the reason is, but I've been at my university for 12 years, and he's been there the whole time. So I mean, he could have been, he could be there for 20 or 30 years. I don't know. He's just selling peanuts, and that's his thing. So I'm on board with your first realization for sure.
And I also want to mention too, it's not just money. It's like a lifestyle thing, and it really does widen your perspective here. And when I look at ads or commercials or TV shows or photos on Facebook or social media of average people's lives in Canada or the West, and I see these massive houses with these huge front yards and backyards,
Right.
And I'm just, it consistently blows my mind, and no one thinks it's out of the ordinary. Everyone lives like that. Or not everyone. A lot of people live like a lot of middle class and upper class.
It's pretty standard in the middle class to have a house and a yard, right?
Yeah, and I'm just, every time I see it, I'm like, oh, here I am in my living room. I'm like, your living room is 3 times the size of my condo that I live in with my family, and I'm not complaining. I'm not saying that's bad, but I just think no one really thinks about that. And every time I see it, I just go, wow, like, you really need to have your eyes opened to see the differences in lifestyle. And like I said, it's nothing new, but just what people take for granted.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, my first thing, I noticed when I looked at my notes for this show is that I feel like my stuff is a little bit more abstract or maybe even academic. But the bottom line is I do work in a university. So this is what I think about all the time.
You are an academic.
Well, I feel like I'm a teacher. I'm not really a scholar, but I'm a teacher, right? And one thing that has been huge for me is trying to sort through stuff that's universal to all human beings and stuff that's just unique to Thai people or Westerners. Because I have all this experience in Thailand, and sometimes I think culture is overemphasized.
Okay.
It's like we think culture controls everything, or when you go to a foreign country, it's like it's a new world. Like you're going to Mars or something like that. But you're like, the bottom line is it's only human beings. It's like it's Homo sapiens. It doesn't matter where you go, it's Homo sapiens. So
Okay.
One of the things that I've learned is I try to look at people as human beings first, and Thai people second. But the second thing still matters. I'm not trying to say culture doesn't matter at all, but I think when I first got here, I thought culture mattered way more, and I really thought of Thai people as very different, very foreign.
Okay, I see.
Very foreign. It's like I remember my first stories about a Thai person did this or a Thai person said that, or I saw an elephant in the street.
Right.
It's like they really are foreign. I mean, and, obviously I am the foreigner in their country. Maybe this is in a way kind of a backwards insight, but one of my insights is to recognize humanity first before you start looking at people as Argentinian or Russian or like, that stuff matters, but it's like icing on the cake. It's not the cake, man. We're like the cake, like we're all human beings. That's the cake. That's the substance of it. So it matters. So it's a little game I play with myself sometimes when I see something that I think is weird, and I ask myself, well, is that something that just a human being would do? Maybe they're in a weird situation. Maybe they got gum on their shoe or whatever it is. Or maybe a bird, like maybe a bird just shit on their shoulder, and so
Right.
the way they're acting is not weird.
Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Like they're just acting like a human being. But then sometimes, a Thai person does say or do something, and I think about it, and I'm like, wow, that's Thai. Like that's like a Thai reaction.
Yeah, I try to do that when I'm driving. If someone's driving like an idiot, and my first response is like, oh, what a crazy guy, dangerous. Blah, blah. But then I think, well, maybe his wife's in the passenger seat having a baby. Like,
Yeah, true. Right,
Maybe
exactly.
well, who knows? Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
So you give people the benefit of the doubt, and I find it at least makes me a lot less stressful.
So I don't know how to summarize it, but I feel like
That's the cake theory. I think you need to work on that. That'd be a nice like
the
abstract.
cake.
You could.
I just want to. I just try to think of people as human beings first, and then also respect the culture and learn the culture. But to me, it's kind of secondary.
Still thinking of the cake. I mean, the people are the cake, and the culture is the icing. Let's just say that.
All right, I'll work on that. I'll work on the cake metaphor.
Put cake in my mind.
You can't stop thinking.
So for me, well, my next thing is sort of like, I've talked on the show before about how I'm very proud of what I've accomplished in 20 years here, having shown up literally as a backpacker with nothing. And I'm not the only one who's done it. I know that. But I think anyone who has done it deserves to be proud of it. And, I've had ups and downs, and I've worked for different companies, and I've gained new skills, and I've got a family, and, that's not easy in the best of circumstances, and doing it overseas in a new culture is even more difficult.
For sure, true that.
And I feel that's given me a lot of really good street cred, insights into how life works, on top of just doing that anywhere. Like, we all
Right, sure.
work through new jobs and gain new experience and stuff like that. But doing it overseas, I think it gives you sort of like a bit of a broader appreciation of how to apply those lessons to a lot of different areas of life.
Yeah, man.
So
I think you've got some great work experience. You've worked for some good companies. You've had people underneath you. If you had done this in Canada, you would be a different person than you were when you were younger. But having done it overseas, I think it's different. It's a different kind of wisdom. That's
right. Yeah, that's right. I think this came up with our recent interview with our friend Derek. And I called him and I said, there's a lot of people in Bangkok who are smart, but there's a lesser number of people who are also wise. And I think living overseas for a long time, it gives you a certain amount of wisdom, and just like life skills, how to apply these lessons to growing up, and advice to people on how to best take advantage of opportunities and apply themselves. I have a hard time sort of conceptualizing it and narrowing it down to like one or two sentences, but it just gives you a really broad set of skills that changes you and allows you to adapt to in a lot of different ways to a lot of situations.
Yeah, I agree.
That's the end of my story.
Well, my second thing again is kind of academic, and it's it might bring some guffaws from people who aren't American or people from around the world. But you got to hear me out on this. So I teach American studies, and I mostly got the job just because I have a law degree in the States. That's how I got the job. Okay, so I didn't study American studies in school. One of my colleagues at my university, he has a PhD in American studies. Okay,
what? You can get a PhD in American studies?
No, you can. But whatever. I was a lawyer. Didn't like it. Came here. Worked my way into this, university thing. And I know this is going to sound horrible, but I have a much greater appreciation for the United States than I did before. I mean, I always was a typical American who, whatever, I like my country, I love my country. I think I had a normal level of patriotism and appreciation, just whatever the normal level is. I was never an American hater. I was never some hardcore patriot either. But being over here, seeing all the stuff that has happened with Thai politics and the Thai government and the two coups we've gone through, and the weakness of the rule of law over here, and I'm not going to go on a political rant, but
for the best.
But wow, do I appreciate the rule of law back home. And even though there's issues and problems, and even though we got riots, people trying to break into the Capitol and overthrow an election, things in the States are far from perfect. But damn, it's having never had a successful coup, having so for example, the people involved in the January 6th riot, okay, they've already arrested, I think, 500 people. So they've got video footage, like phone cameras, and the FBI is tracking down every single person they can, and they broke the law. And you break the law, you pay the price for real. It's not in theory, not on paper, but for real. And I just, man, because if anything like this happened in Thailand, 0 people would be prosecuted, or maybe one unlucky bastard would like get prosecuted. You know what I mean?
Well,
You
look
know?
at the airport shutdown in 2000.
Yeah,
Was that 8?
like airport shutdown. Like if there's a greater act of terrorism, I don't know what it is, than seizing an international airport and shutting it down. 0 people went to jail for that, because the leaders were these prominent, like whatever, PDRC. But my whole point is, and again, this sounds like geeky academic stuff, but this is what I teach, because I teach American government and I teach political science. I teach political science, and so. Damn, man, like the rule of law matters. I mean, I'm not sure how it's made me a better person, but I think it has, because I appreciate it so much more. And I try to explain it to my students why it really matters. Like why
it has made you want to follow the law a bit more, like adhere to the law, do things
Oh, that's
on the
crazy.
up and
No,
above board.
of course not. I would never want to do that. I'm just saying, no, of course. No, but it just makes me, I don't know, like what the right word is. I mean, it's I just appreciate, and part of me now doesn't like this, because I feel like we keep falling back on like privilege, like we're so lucky to be born in the West, and that's just kind of gross. And that's
gross.
That's not really the purpose of this show. Like I'm not trying to say I'm so lucky to be American. I mean, it looks like I'm going to stay here the rest of my life. So it's like I'm not personally benefiting by the rule of law in the United States. It's just the insight into how much that shit matters. And when I talk to my students about Thai politics and Thai government, mostly my students are just filled with despair. Like, they're just like, there's nothing we can do. It's just a mess. It's just a freaking nightmare. And they,
but you see how important that is to like the cohesive structural integrity of a society, and what the not lack of it, but how a weaker structure can weaken the society at large.
Yeah. I mean, and again, I do think it's actually made me a better person, because I understand. I just understand a bit more, like why those institutions matter and how hard it is to build those things up. It's just a. I mean, this is a kind of on the one hand, it's an academic issue, but it's real life. It's like how do you. Like, how do you get good police? How do you get good courts? How do you get a system where that if people break into the parliament, everyone's going to get tracked down, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, whether you're a yellow shirt or a red shirt, you broke the law.
That's right.
And it's certainly not perfect. It's like there's a million problems, but there's a big difference between here and there.
One could play devil's advocate and say that America and other countries like it have had several hundred years to get their democratic stuff in order.
Well, yeah.
Whereas Thailand has had less than 100.
History. This is exactly what I teach. I mean, when America was founded, we basically just took the entire system of British law. We took British common law. So, and the British common law sat on top of Roman law, and Roman law sits on top of Greek law. So it's really it goes back to the so really the West was built over 2,500 years, and that got funneled into the U.S. These are all things I learned. Of course, you learn this stuff in junior high,
and it does make you a little bit. It sometimes can sort of turn into a little bit of. Make you hopeful and optimistic for the future of Thailand, because you're like, hey man, this is a young country in terms of democratic processes and structures that underlie the
for sure yeah.
They're going through their struggles just like anyone else did.
For sure, yeah. I tell my students this all the time, that how corrupt the U.S. was just 100 years ago. Way down the road, the U.S. was super corrupt. But anyway, I don't want to get too academic, but I don't know. It's just it's one of those things. How sometimes you learn a lesson in school and you memorize it and you put it on the test, and then whatever. But then sometimes it smacks you in the face later in life, and you're like, oh my God, like that, like this was really true. This is really important. This is like world changing shit. Why one societies are developed and other societies aren't, because they have X, and it's not about privilege or luck or being better or superior. It's just if you break the law, are you going to have to do the punishment that the law says you're going to have to do? And in Thailand, it obviously exists.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Right. But if there's anything to do with politics, then it's just a crapshoot whether you're actually going to have to pay the price.
Yeah, I get it. All right, well, let's get into I'll go first here then for the ways in which Thailand has changed me for the worse.
All right, let's make these really quick.
What? We don't get into too much detail.
Our bad habits.
This all started when I was 7. No. So I think that I can sometimes, this sort of builds on what I said in my previous point about how I'm proud of how far I've come and what I've done here and what I've learned here. I can sometimes take that too far and turn into kind of a dismissive jerk about my home culture and the people that I grew up with and people who haven't had the same experiences as me.
Ah, interesting. So you mean...
Well, it's like, I find it very easy to downshift into the attitude of like people I grew up with. I mean, they're still in their boring little city and they haven't had...
Oh, I see.
You're
the world traveler.
Yeah, I've done this cool stuff. And what have you done? You're still in Canada, like lame, and I find it, I can catch myself sometimes like, whoa. You can be kind of a dick now.
Right.
So, I mean, but I think it's quite easy to let those accomplishments of building a life here go to your head and then turning that, sort of weaponizing that against people who haven't done that.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Like that is definitely a bad habit, or to fall into the trap of thinking that you're somehow better than them now.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not like my friends back home are just as happy, if not happier than I ever have been here.
Right.
But they just have, their happiness buttons are different than mine. And
yeah,
cool.
Sure.
Great. But,
and they've learned a lot in the years you've been here. They've done weird, cool shit. Who knows what they've done?
That I haven't done. Yeah.
That's right.
It's just that I happen to have taken to Asia and the sort of adventures and shenanigans that one can get up to here, and maybe have turned them into sort of like, well, I've done this. Have you? And if they say no, then I go, pff.
Well, that was honest of you, but I guess that's the purpose of this show.
I guess so. Yeah.
Honestly, I don't really want to talk about mine, but I guess I'm supposed to be honest. So.
Oh. No, I went first. You have to do yours.
Oh, no. We're out of time. Aren't we out of time? Let's check the clock.
No. Well, that's a good thing about podcast, Ed. There's no boss. We can go as long as we need to.
Great. Well, here's my thing, and I honestly feel weird and bad about it. So we've talked before about how Thailand is a more authoritarian culture, right? And teachers and professors are an example of authority. And so as I got used to being a teacher at a Thai university, I learned about all this power I have. That like essentially I have a lot of power that I wouldn't have in an American university. Now it's not like power like I make a ton of money, not that kind of power, but it's just I have ways to interact with students, and the students are much more constrained. And I don't want to go into too much detail because it gets into my a little bit too personal with my job. But like, I'll give you a simple example. In the U.S., you take an exam, and then the professor returns the exam to you with a grade and comments.
Right. Yeah.
Like pretty straightforward. But at my university, we're not allowed to return exams to students.
Really?
They just get a grade.
So the student can't get it back and go, hey, whoa, this is...
They don't get to read the exam and even necessarily see their mistakes. They just get a grade.
Really?
Yeah. Now, just to be clear, they can request a meeting to go over the exam, but most students don't do that. When I learned this rule, I was like, okay, this is really kind of silly, but I made sure I was with my boss, who I've had all great bosses. I was like, can I just do it on the side? I mean, come on. Okay. I understand what the rule is, but I just want to show them. And my boss was like, you cannot do that because my university or Thai universities are really uptight about the security of the exams. Like they treat the exams like something that a professor should be allowed to use the same one every year.
Really?
Whereas it's interesting, at my undergraduate university, there was a student services center where they had file cabinets of old exams. So, because an exam gets returned to you. And so students just drop it off, like they're like at the end of this semester or when they graduate, they're like, I don't need these exams anymore. So you drop it off at the student center. So, Econ 201. So there's just a file cabinet full of old Econ 201 exams. So if you're a motivated, like I was a pretty good student, so you just go to the student center, I'm taking Econ 201, I open up the file cabinet and I get a bunch of old Econ 201 exams. It's all out in the open.
Cool.
Right. But here it's the exact opposite. Like they treat the exams like they're like secret property. And so the students never get it back. And so I was told that I wasn't allowed to do it on the sly. So I said, okay, I'm not allowed to do it on the sly, but I can still, in the next lecture, I can still go over it. I can still talk about it. And, it fresh in my head from grading the exam, I can tell them like the common mistakes.
Okay.
I can
Loophole.
I can do the right thing and give them the feedback that in this university, I don't think they're not used to getting.
Okay.
And then I got lazy and stopped doing it. Because I don't have to do it, and it's like and so I want to be clear, any student that asks, like, Ajahn, they just send me a message, I thought I would get a B on this, but I only got, a C. Can you explain why? For sure. So right. I'm not saying I don't do my job. In the States, it's like the students you would be seen as the students have a right to see their exam and to understand, right. And it's like transparency to see why they got the grade they got. So you get back all your exams.
Yeah. So, but because the students here are coming from a position of weakness in terms of authority,
they just have to accept
it. Yeah, like, sure, whatever.
Yeah, it's like, here's your grade, 68. Eat it.
My way or the highway. Beat it.
Eat it. I mean, seriously, that's it. And most students they get the number, and whatever. So whatever. So that's my confession.
Interesting. And you're not doing anything wrong. It's just the way things are, right?
Yeah. But anyway, that's my bad habit. I think I've fallen into the being a bit taking advantage of my position of authority. Does that make sense?
The authority that your position grants you.
That's right. When I thought before, I'm like, I would never do that.
but now you're like,
but I'm lazy. But I'm lazy.
Kind of works in my favor, actually.
It does. No, it does. Like the authoritarian culture here that I don't agree with benefits me.
We've talked about that before too, about how like corruption is awful and it's holding the country back, unless it happens to you, and then
right. Sometimes
I can get on board with this.
Right. Anyway, okay, that's enough. That's enough talking about my bad habits.
Are you sure we can go on this all night?
No. We're done now.
Well, I think we're all in the same boat here. Like you said, we're all humans here. We're just trying to do the best we can, and I think the first step is realizing that everyone's got successes and failures and strengths and weaknesses, and especially when you're living overseas, hopefully you'll end up on your feet more often than you end up on your face.
Hopefully. And I do. I honestly believe that I'm a better person having lived here than if I stayed at home. Now, I don't know for sure, because like if I had stayed at home, I would have done all kinds of cool stuff and learned a lot of stuff. But and this is part of the reason why I stayed here. Like I think it's because I was not a well-traveled person. I was not international. So the fact that I came here, I think it has made me a better person or a different person than I would have been.
Yeah, I agree.
So net positive, I hope.
Yeah, and listeners, if you hear me getting too critical of Western culture or Canada or something like that, you can call me out on it. Unless I'm making fun of guys who wear business suits and cowboy hats, who I still maintain look like the biggest doofuses on the face of the planet.
Okay, those people you're allowed to look down on.
As George Carlin said, "Hey Tex, how about you wear an outfit consistent with the century you're living in?"
That's great.
All right, good talk. All right, let's get into some love, loathe, or live with, where one of us picks a particular aspect of living in Bangkok, which we then discuss and decide if it's something that we love about living here, loathe about living here, or have come to accept as something that we just have to learn to live with no matter how we feel about it. And last time, Ed asked me about talkative taxi drivers, so this week it's my turn. Now, Ed, this one is very, very simple and very straightforward. It's something that a lot of tourists, when they come to Thailand, think as just the bee's knees. And I want to hear what you think about it. What do you think about a freshly opened coconut with a straw sticking out of it?
Like it. I'm probably going to go love. It's funny. I used to think that coconut water was super healthy, and I certainly don't think it's unhealthy now. But since I've gotten into nutrition, I think coconut water is not as special. I think it's not really a gimmick, but I think it gets overhyped. Like
really?
like it's filled with electrolytes, and it's people push it like it's this super health food. I don't think it's a super health food, but it's natural, it's vegan. I've always liked it. It's kind of cool, a little bit different. Like when they chop the coconut open, you don't really see that in the States. Like presumably you would see it maybe in a tropical part of the States, maybe down south somewhere. But
Right.
I got to go thumbs up on the fresh coconut water.
It was funny when my mom comes here, like she's just as soon as she sees someone selling a coconut, she has to have one.
Oh, really?
It's just like the end all be all for her, like a coconut with a straw sticking out of it. It's such an idyllic,
Yes.
cliche image of tropical.
That's right. Yeah. I'm down. I'm down.
So I've never really liked coconut juice. Every time I try coconut juice, I always go like, I could take this or leave this. I don't know. I guess I'm a live with. I like it and I'll drink it, but I don't search it out.
I'm not quite your mom's level, but I think I like it enough to go. I'm going to go love on that.
Maybe I remember a fact I read when I had like these book of facts when I was like 12 years old. My mom would buy me, and I remember one of the facts that said that the milk of young coconuts can be used as a replacement for blood plasma in an emergency.
Weird.
And I never really forgot that.
So you're
I
like,
always
okay,
think of that
you're drinking blood plasma right now.
Exactly. That's what I kind of, it's in the back of my mind. So
Funny.
maybe
Funny.
that has something to do with it.
Okay, so as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we'd like to say thank you to Sora Crit for lending us his support at the show shout-out level. Greg, what did you find out about Sora Crit?
Well, as you can probably tell from his name, Mr. Sorakrit is a Thai dude, and he is a dentist head, a
All right.
real-life professional.
Cool.
And the funny thing is, him and I were talking back and forth on some messages in here, and turns out he knows my buddy Ray, who is also a dentist.
Nice.
Yeah, small world. And he specializes in oral and jaw surgery, to which I have to say, hats off to you, sir, because when I was younger, I thought I wanted to be a dentist until I started looking at books and pictures of what dentists actually need to do. And I was like, nope, that's the end of that.
Right, sure.
Yeah. But, it's funny because Sorakrit and me have a couple of things in common. Like me, he really likes Japan. He spent some time over there when he was a young kid.
Cool.
On an exchange program. He thinks that Yaowarat has the best street food in Bangkok. And like me, he doesn't like spicy food.
Wow. I like it when Thai people admit that.
That's what he said. He says, imagine being Thai and can't eat spicy food. I've gotten a lot of abuse, but I insist it can be learned.
Well, it's funny. I sometimes ask my students that, and usually, about 20-30% like sheepishly raise their hand, when they see other people.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's more than you would think. It's more than 10%.
That's funny. I guess it's kind of a mark of pride of Thai people. Like you just assume, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And I felt a kinship with Kun Sorakrit because it's the same thing with me and beer. I mean, I'll have a beer or two, but no more than that. I don't really like them after that. And I'm Canadian, right? So people are like, hey, beer. And they're also like, hey, you must like hockey. I'm like, no, I don't like sports at all in any shape or form. So Kun Sorakrit, I feel your pain, brother.
All right.
These sort of like cultural presuppositions that are pasted on top of you. You're like, Thai, you must like Thai spicy food. No. And then they boo you. Same as me. Oh, you must love beer. No.
All right.
I get made fun of. So thank you for your support, man. Let's go out and have some soda water and some very bland somtam. It'll be a fun night.
A wild night.
That's right. But thanks, man.
All right. Thank you, Sorakrit. Okay, a final thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a ton of cool perks and the warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that they're helping support the show. Find out more by clicking support on our website. And connect with us online. We're Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from our listeners and always reply to our messages.
Truth. You can also listen to each episode on YouTube. Send us a voicemail online that will feature on the show, or even reach out to me directly on Twitter, where I'm BKK Greg. So thanks for listening, everyone. Take care out there, and we'll see you back here next week.
For sure.
I really need an office, man. This constant working at home with my kid, I just do
No,
not like it. Cannot be productive. Too many distractions.
I agree. That would be brutal. I love having just control over my space and time. I think you're in the opposite situation where you don't have any privacy or like your own space.
Zero.
Brutal.
But I signed that away when I decided to have a child. My own fault. I blame no one but myself. Actually, I kind of blame my wife too.
She had something to do with it.